Right. So just start by sitting forward on your chair, and then let some of your weight be taken by your feet. As always, if you find your back starts to ache or something, sit back somewhere more comfortable. Rub your hands together. And then tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. And shoulder and your arm. And the other side. Upper part of your chest. Your belly. And your legs. Sit back in the chair. A couple of slow, gentle breaths. Reminding yourself what it's like to really settle back, to allow yourself to sink into the chair with as much of your body as you're able to do so, with this feeling of releasing, of softening, almost sometimes described as a kind of dissolving away, tightness and stiffness in the body. Feel yourself getting a bit heavier in the chair as a result. Maybe notice things like changes, if any, in your breathing, a greater sense of, you may notice your heart beating more, you may notice your circulation pumping a little bit more, because along with the settling of the body comes this quietening of your attention, a kind of focus of your attention inward as much as anything else. And feet back in, come back to the upright position, see how much of that you're able to reproduce in the upright position, partly by just adjusting your posture until you feel the support from feet and hips and the chair really supporting your upper body, and this inner structure, skeleton, surrounding area, also offering the support from within. So feeling of your weight dropping down, less weight in the upper part of your body. Again, a settled feeling in mind and body. And then turning your head. Notice that when we're less tight, even the simple movement like this will create a sense of movement in connected areas of the body. So maybe between the shoulder blades, either side of your spine, maybe down front of the chest, or the ribs, or across the shoulders. And then on your shoulders, circling around. going forwards. Hands down to your side, with this idea that there's a sort of post or a bollard or something next to you, something round, palms of your hands face against it, and just rotating your arms. And because your elbows are pushed out slightly, the overall effect is that your hand will just move around the bollard. So again, quite a simple movement, a rotation in your shoulder that you may feel connecting to chest, upper back, maybe your sides. And then raising your arms, trying to go around the full circle. Don't strain for this. If your wrists will go back a long way, fine. If they don't, it's really, this is the movement that we're looking for, the rotation through the whole of your arm. And back the other way. And there are certain movements that we do where this sort of rotation takes place. So as we go through the session, you may notice those. Now, before we go into the weight transfer, just a little extra exercise. Take your hand and just place them on your belly, kind of just below your navel. Imagine there's a ball underneath your hand in your belly. Press in gently and just circle around. So you're rolling the ball around. It doesn't matter which direction, because we're going both directions. Just get a sense of movement there. This is to draw your attention to that part of your body, and at the same time to just physically activate the nerves there. This is the area sometimes referred to as the dantian. Go back the other way. This is quite a common movement in a lot of qigong. Used for various reasons, but as I say, I'm really using it for those two reasons I said. One is your own awareness, and connected with that, of course, is just feeling the movement there. So then rest your hands on your legs, and that same part of the body, that same awareness, now rolls forward. So your pelvis tilts forwards, taking your weight forwards, angling your upper body. Sink back in your hips, push with your legs. So now there's a rolling backwards, a rotation backwards. Tai Chi is centered movement, moving from the center of our body. Tai Chi is intentional movement. We have the intention to move in particular ways, to particular patterns. And one of the most important intentions we can begin to build is the intention to move in that centered way. Hence the exercise to draw your attention to that area. In this opening part of the session, we go through a number of things that actually we want to be part of our intention, but in the end, in the background, a kind of subconscious intention. This is the chance to focus on them quite deliberately. And the transfer of your weight and the turning in your center move and shape all of the other movements. And then turn just a little bit. So you turn in that part of the body. That now redirects the weight transfer more into whichever leg you're moving into. and then turn in the other direction. And circle around. Notice how when we move in the center, our ribs follow, our shoulders follow, our hands and arms will follow. And back the other way. Good. And then sit back and then step out with one foot, heel toe, and then a little press in. Just measure your step. And then on the other side. And then sit for a moment. And again, it's that central part of the body that is dropping down through the chair. This is the, if you like, the process of rooting down. So those are the components, the building blocks of the movement. So this first part of the class is important, really, for that, as well as the actual kind of physicality of it. You're obviously going through different parts of the body. You're loosening those parts, those joints, which is very, very, very important. But you also bring in your attention and bring in your intent to those parts of the body. Hands out to your side. So combining this rotational movement we did earlier with the transfer of your weight, bird folds its wings. So at this stage, just remind yourself that you're not trying to move your arms forwards and backwards. In other words, you're not trying to do this. You're not trying to send your hands away from a line directly down from your shoulder through your arm to your fingers. And yet, the combination of the rotation and the weight transfer actually gives you quite a sort of dynamic movement, really. One that engages not just your arms, but your whole body, including chest and upper back. So this is something to take note of here, that essentially by leaving your arms in position, by not trying to move your arms other than the rotation, you actually get quite a lot of movement here. And this is a principle that will hold good in all of the exercises. So now what we're going to do is we're going to change to fisherman cast a net. And what you do here is one thing less. You don't rotate and you just go back, and that leaves the hand behind and then it follows. Almost like somebody has hold of your arm. Same thing going forwards, or as though you're in water. And so with this swinging movement, you've got a very similar kind of feeling, chest and upper back to the previous one. The momentum, the energy of the movement will slowly build. And as your shoulder softens and loosens, then the combination will give you a little bit more movement. And those of you, as you get more experience with Tai Chi, as you get to be more familiar with these small changes, and I mentioned chest and upper back, but maybe in other places as well, then sending your intent to sort of open the chest a little bit more, to open your back a little bit more, and so on and so forth, can actually help you to extend the overall range of your movement. and then rolling the ball in. But I don't try and lift my arms, I pull them over, maintain the angle between arm, body. And then this time, turning your hands palm in, draw your elbows apart, pigeon spreads its wings. Here we really do feel the effect on chest and upper back quite strongly, usually with this exercise. A good one if you are a bit stiff in that area, chest, shoulders, upper back. Sort of pumping movement. It's almost like your rib cage can really spread out here, and then the sternum, the breastbone draws back, drawing your arms in. Of course, at the same time, your weight is still moving. So remember the phrase, when one part of your body is in motion, the whole body is in motion. All parts of your body, one way or another, are engaged in allowing this movement to happen. And then push and wave. One more time. And then hands rolled into a hollow fist and punch with both hands. Open your fingers this time. Turn your hands palm out, winding out and back in, onto your hips. Press forwards. One more time. Now polishing the table. Turn your hands palm down. You turn in that central part of your body. Roll it forwards. Turn back the other way. Roll the hips back. And then change direction. Your arms, just gently extend the angle of your elbow, angle between your arm and your side. Both of them extend out, open up a little bit. So again, this is not a stretch with the arms. It feels more like your fingers are being pushed away from the shoulder. Your arm seems to grow out a little bit further. Do one more on each side. And then back, turning your hands palm up. Gentle push through feet and hips with your back lengthening, like a wave coming up, pushing your hands up and then draining away, lowering them down. Hips sink down into your chair with the pushing up. So that really make sure of that connection to the ground. For a slightly stronger movement, you can factor in the downward movement as a push, almost like you're pushing a ball down in the water. So it almost feels as though you're doing this. You're not doing it. You're not bending forwards, but you want this sense of a downward movement through your chest, through your shoulders. So your whole body is just dropping down, almost as though the ball were, obviously you were sitting on it and you were trying to squash it down. And with that same kind of awareness, same kind of inner dynamic, change into the wild goose. And then passing the clouds, going forwards a little bit more, hands going in front of your knees, sit back into your hips and push up. And you can see we're still very much engaging the whole body, part of the movement. Feet are active, hips are active, your weight moves a little bit through the expansion, through the belly, back, chest and shoulders. All these little elements combining to move our arms for us, using our awareness, our intent to shape the movement that's there with our hands and arms. One more time. Your hands drop down. Dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Now the expansion, Recognize through one side of your body. Draw down. Do one more on each side. And then changing both hands together. A little bit above your head. And out to your side. Try and remember to position your hands so that they're comfortable, not moving too far. So that the weight of your arms isn't carried by straining your shoulders, but rather by this sense of a transmission of your weight down through your body. One more round. And then push one foot out, just the heel on the floor, toes up, scooping the sea and looking at the sky. Twist your hands again. Now, grasping the tiger's ears, angle forwards, draw your arms over. Once again, your arms are slightly behind. I exaggerate. See how I go forwards? That opens my chest. So part of what brings your arms through is that same thing you were using in things like bird folds its wings and so on, pigeon spread its wings. Here, as I go back, there's this sort of opening out. Obviously, that's exaggerated. But then as I go forwards, there's this withdrawal. You see how that helps to bring my arms around. So an awareness of these very subtle connections through our body really helps us to navigate the movements. So changing over, scooping the sea and looking at the sky. And then grasping the tiger's ears. And when we get that sense of our whole body in movement, that's also when the energy will be at its best flow, because both are dependent both on, to an extent, on each other, but also on correct posture, correct movement, correct structure. One more time. Bring your feet back. So as we go through the different movements, we're trying to maintain the both to an extent the actual structure that we take, but also the sort of feeling of movement that we get when we've got correct structure, because obviously our structure will change a bit. It will change between seated and standing, according to the exercises, but the feeling is a constant exercise. And it's very easy to lose that without realizing it. And the more complex the movements, the trickier the movements we find, the more likely that is. So for something like Part the Wild Horse's Mane, for instance, which we'll do in a moment, but when I go from here to here, you see, what I've done is I've moved forwards, I've angled forwards, and I've done that rotation sideways, and the combination brings my hand out. So now, the majority of our weight in that foot, what we often find ourselves doing is something like this. You see, now I'm leaning out. If I go out just a little bit further, now I'm in danger of falling out of the chair. So although the body is angling, it's not bending. This is the upper body. The movement is in the hips, so that whether it's there or whether it's there, it's still possible for your body to rotate in the way that my arm is now rotating. So part in the Wild Horse's Mane. I sit your weight back in your right hip. Hold a ball with your right hand on top, your left hand underneath. You move forwards and you turn towards your left leg. And that movement will send your left hand out and up. Just drop the top hand down. And then come back, hold the ball, and move across to the other side. Same thing here, move forwards and turn, gentle rotation, and back. Part the Wild Horse's Mane. Your weight is moving, the center of your body is turning, and those two movements are very linked in with each other. Sometimes it's the movement of the weight that encourages our body to turn. Sometimes it's the other way around. Remember, any kind of segmentation that we make, any kind of idea or description about the body that compartmentalizes it, here is the waist, here are the hips, here's the shoulder, here's the feet, is actually misleading us. It can be useful sometimes, but we need to realize the limitations of it, because our bodies simply don't work like that. Do one more on each side. Remember, keeping our intent active, keeping our attention means that we can guide our intent correctly. So now making very similar movements. Bring your weight to the middle though. Hands in front of you. Turn so your weight moves across a little bit. Go forwards. Once again, extending the arm around, like in polishing the table, and come back. Try the other way. So alternating from one side to another. Stirring the bean. Again, your arms extending and contracting. Nice and easy and gently. And then just let your hands come to rest. And check your posture again. Chances are, with one or other of the movements, your posture kind of slipped a little bit. It's normal. As soon as we start to move, things start to change. Quite challenging to maintain good structure, good posture. And that's where that intuitive sense of how that can feel becomes important. A couple of slow, gentle breaths. And then, just again, rubbing your hands together. Going through this little tapping exercise again. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm. On the other side. Upper part of the chest. And belly. And legs. Push your heels up, knees come up. And then rotate the movement into your hips. Back the other way. And then to stand. So once again, we're trying to reproduce that quality within the body that we get when we're sitting back, when we're moving with alignment. And there's various ways you could describe it. No one description, no one label can ever tell you the whole story with these movements. One of the ways I like to think of this is that there's a certain amount of space within the body, and because we're always trying to engage our minds, also within the mind, we're always bringing our attention back to the movements that we're doing. Constantly we find ourselves getting distracted from that, but we constantly come back. So some of the things that are kind of hovering around us begin to just recede a little bit. So these are moving meditations. So the standing posture, you want to have your feet parallel. Weight a little bit forwards. I'll exaggerate. And then with the weight a little bit forwards again, bring your attention back to this central area. This is really exaggerated, way too much, but I want you to see what's happening here in a moment. I get my hands out the way, because to neutralize the sense of being pulled forwards, I soften my knees and let my hips drop back. And what that means is that this central part of the body rotates. This is all very exaggerated, by the way. And it's this sense of just dropping back here and settling down. Now this part of the body settles towards the ground. It can feel like somebody's hung a weight from your spine, or your pelvis is hanging from your spine. And again, supported through that deeper area of your body. Skeleton now much more in line than it is with the pull of gravity, because our feet are directly below us. And also support from legs and back to the front of the body, so not tight in belly, chest, shoulders. Let your hips drop down again, bring your hands around, and then pushing up and sinking. If you can follow the sensation of draining away, of dissolving from your shoulders down through your back, say, or maybe through the front of your body, through your hips, to your feet, then that will have the effect of bringing your attention down to the ground as well. And we start to get these little moments feeling very settled. This time, turn your hands, palm out, change into the standing version of the wild goose. So our bodies offer the possibility of a sort of focus of attention, a quietening of our attention to our mind and our thoughts. And that quieter mind, more focused mind, means that our intent can be much more effective and actually encouraging the body to move correctly, the correct posture, moving in the correct way, and so on and so forth. And then changing okay, and let your hands drop. And as you stand here, just turn a little bit from side to side. Again, I'm exaggerating a little bit. Most of these movements are quite small. But again, notice that what I'm not doing, or trying not to do, is this or this. So it's like it's like there's the axle of a wheel, if you like, running through the middle of my body, and I'm just swinging around it. And when I bring my arms up, just bring your arms up in front of you and notice how they're moving. But what can happen very easily, even with a movement like this, and obviously it gets more complicated, is that we end up doing this. You see, now I'm trying to move from the top of my body. I'm content here to let my arms be moved by the movement in the center of the body. I may even move my weight a little bit, so I could go into my right foot and then into my left. But again, what I'm not doing is this. And if I if I want to, I can then begin to extend my arms out. But if I extend about too far, now you can see the angle of my body has slightly tilted. Whereas if I bring my arms back, so we want to extend our range of movement, but we want to extend it carefully without straining like that. Just shake out. I'll come back to that because when we come to a movement like say this here, I'm standing on one leg, but shaky today. But there you go. So if I'm actually, I'm going to keep my foot down. It's obviously not working out standing here. But even here, if I do this, can you see that I'm now leaning over? So I'm trying too hard with my arms. It's not going to work. So just put one foot forwards and begin to transfer your weight. So essentially, I'm pushing myself forwards and backwards. I'm using my legs to move me. I'm not trying to lean. Now the basic exercise that we do with this one, really, ideally we face forwards, but we can also vary that. If you're a little bit out, don't worry, but go into your back foot and then turn. And again, notice that I've turned here, not leant over. And then I go forwards and turn and back, turn. And then I go back and you can turn or not turn, it's up to you. Sometimes the turn helps with this. You raise your front toes and you bring the foot in. You step forwards. Again, if I do the turn, see how that helps to bring my foot in. And once again, if I lean, that's going to happen. So try that on the other side. First of all, the standard version, as much as possible facing forward. Don't worry if you're at a slight angle. And then you have to turn forward and we're swinging around that center line. One of the nice images associated with this is in the old writings is that it's like a weather vane blowing in a breeze. It's a very light movement. And then we can begin to step in. And step through whichever direction you only have room for. And going back. Okay, so right foot forwards and the standing version of fisherman cast the net. This time, as you go back, turn, draw your hands across, just let them swing up in a circular movement, and as they start to come down, going forwards, just tracing out this figure of 8, or prefer the image of the infinity sign. Shake out. Try that with your left foot forward. So starting with fisherman castanet. And then turning. And step through. Bring the foot in. Step. Go forward. Remember, don't lean over, and just be moderate in the movement of your arms. Get a sense for how far they can move without creating any kind of sense of stiffening and tightening. Change direction if you haven't done so already. And remember, when we move our arms, when we rotate them and so on and so forth, it's connected to what's happening, for instance, in areas like chest and upper back. So all of those places could well be areas that begin to tighten up, begin to stiffen up. It's very, very subtle. We're constantly refining these things. One more time. And then just shake out. Lovely, go back to your chairs. So we become very attuned to what's happening on very subtle levels within our body with Tai Chi. And that has all sorts of advantages to it. That awareness gradually becomes part of our intent, so that our everyday movements begin to change. Quite often without us actually deliberately realizing them. Sometimes we might think, oh, I can do this better. But things like, we're less likely to overextend and hurt our shoulder or something like that, because we know that well, it's not because we know, but we begin to move in this habitually different way. So paying attention to these small movements right at the beginning is the start of that process. So just sitting, let your hands come down to your sides. Embrace tiger, return to the mountain. Once again, just following the movement in your mind's eye, feeling that sensation of draining away, of dissolving, particularly on this final stage. So there's just a few moments when your thoughts, your mind seems to land. And in those few moments, there's just that sense of stillness, calmness, that again becomes part of the overall characteristic of practice, and also becomes intentful, something we intend. And now just let your hands rest. Take a couple of slow, gentle breaths. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. Pause the recording. And